Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm super excited to share with you today these steps on how to build the following year-over-year chart. In my experience, it's a huge crowd pleaser with executives and with analytics representatives, and today we're going to do this data analyst project together in SQL Server. Okay, so in SQL Server, every company has a revenue table, and it's typically just a table with revenue transactions, not aggregated to any one field or column. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to filter this data down to just current year and prior year, and I'll show you how to do that. So there is a very special sort of keyword called getDate, and this will return the value, which will be today's date, August 21st, 2024. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert this value to January 1st, 2024, and then we're actually going to remove a year and make it January 1st, 2023. Okay, fantastic. So what this is going to do is it's going to say, hey, we only want dates that are greater than or equal to 2023, January 1st. So that'll always return current year and prior year. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to generate the values in the x-axis of that chart, and these are values that range from 1 to 365. So first we have the purchase date, and then we have the purchase amount, and we want to aggregate revenue, and I'm going to do a coalesce. This is just for safety to make sure that all nulls are converted to zeros before I sum this data. Okay, there's one thing I want to show you, which is how we're going to get the difference between two dates to get those x-axis values. Okay, cool. So we basically added a new column, right? And it takes the value from purchase date and it makes it January 1st of that year. So now what we're going to do is we're going to subtract these two values. And that's going to basically get us the x-axis for our chart. So just do this. And this will be a positive value. And call this date difference. Okay. Let's alter our group by a little bit. Make sure there aren't any column aliases in your group by. We have to make sure that we're subtracting those two values by increments of day. And there's our new column, right? So we're gonna use this column to basically create the x-axis in our chart, because remember, we are comparing revenue cumulatively between the current year and the prior year, and we basically want to do it beginning from 1 to 365. So you'll notice this value here is 0. We don't want the x-axis chart to be 0 to 364. We want it to be 1 to 365. So let's change this real quick. We're just gonna add a 1 here. Okay, let's rerun this. Okay, great, no more zeros. So we've already written quite a bit of SQL. Before things get too crazy, what I would always recommend is to break down your processes and to take these data sets and save them into temporary tables. So temporary tables are places where you can store query results, and they remain in those temp tables, and those temp tables can be queried by you later on in your processes. Just remember that temporary tables only exist for the current SQL Server session. After the session ends, those temporary tables get dropped, hence the name temporary. So let's save this data into a temporary table. So when I run this query, it's going to save the records into this temporary table, but I'm going to show you something kind of interesting here. So actually, what you can see is we ran this and we got an error. It's saying a temporary table already exists called revenue aggregation. So this often happens, and this statement up here is truly a lifesaver. So for example, if you're working on the same process all day within the same SQL Server session, oftentimes you're going to be running and rerunning your data. To make sure you don't get that error that we saw, it's important to have this statement up here. And what this statement does is it says, hey, if this temporary table already exists, drop it, and then insert the new data into that same temporary table. So this helps because if you try to insert data into the same temporary table more than once, you will get an error. So this saves you here. So we can run this over and over and over again with 0 issues. So that's pretty cool. And again, I'm a huge fan of modular code. So instead of writing massive subselects or anything like that, just break down your process, annotate your code, and save query results into temporary tables. And when you save them into temporary tables, add this clause here above. Okay, so here is our data. What do we need to do now? So what we need to do is, this is revenue by day. We need to add a new column that is cumulative revenue by the year. So prior year versus current year, because we want to compare the two. So I'm going to call this table A. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a self join back to this very same table. It'll be a left join back to the revenue aggregation temporary table, but we're gonna rename it table B. And we want to join year to year in the same table. So basically current year data with current year data and prior year data with prior year data. Okay, so here is what's going to bring across cumulative data, right? So if we look at table A, right, you see this value 90. What we want to do is we want to go back to the same table and we want to bring all the revenue records from 1 to 90 and have it summed into a column. So this statement right here essentially accomplishes that for us. Where it's saying, hey, if the value is 90 or less, all the way down to 1, bring across those revenue records and we are going to sum them. So now we are going to sum our current year and prior year revenue. Okay, cool. So let me explain this right here. What this is saying is it's saying, what is the current year? So let's use get date again. It's going to return August 21st, 2024, which is the date of today's recording. And it's going to convert this back to January 1st, 2024. It's saying if the year is January 1st, 2024, sum that revenue, and we're going to call that current year. And just as likely, we can create a prior year column that does the exact same thing. Do this. But what we need to do is we need to go back 1 year. Okay, fantastic. All we need to do is run this query now, and we have our data. You can see that we get zeros in the current year column, and those represent dates that are in the future that haven't happened yet. So that would be September through December of 2024. So let's just take this data to Excel now. Now that we've selected all of our data, let's build our chart. And what we need to do now is delete this additional sort of trend line. And there we have it. We have our current year and prior year Excel chart. And we can do a few touch-ups to make it look nice. And there we go. In my opinion, I think this is a great chart to show to executives. It shows revenue year over year for your business. And now that we've walked through it in SQL Server, you know exactly what to do. Thank you so much for joining today's tutorial. Continue to like and subscribe.